How to tell if your child is super alert. So many parents that come to me for help with their little one's sleep have these very alert temperament children, and they are notoriously tricky sleepers, and it's a lot to do with the temperament, the personality traits, and not to box children into categories, but if you understand these personality traits, it can be so much easier to then know how best to help your child. So how can you tell if your child is super alert? I'm going to give you 5 easy ways to work this out. Number 1, even as young babies, they look like they are taking notes on the world around them. Their eyes can be fixated. You can see the cogs turning, like they are processing everything they're looking at and learning. It's like they're taking it all in, they're working it out, they're processing it, and just by looking at them, you can see this in their eyes. It takes a bit of practice to spot, but if anybody ever says to you, "Cool, your child's switched on," or that kind of thing, into everything, that can be a sign of being really alert. And that doesn't mean, I don't mean into everything, running around and exploring everything. I mean, you can see that they're looking, absorbing, processing things, even as young babies, sort of 3 months and on. So that's one. Another one, number 2, they can reach developmental milestones early. So if you find your baby sitting, crawling, walking earlier than the average, that's another sign that they're very alert. And again, that's because they've been watching, learning, processing it, practicing maybe. But these alert types can be a little bit ahead of the game. Sitting as early as sort of 4 months is alert. Crawling before 6 months, walking 10 or 11 months, before the average. The average is about 15 months. So reaching those developmental milestones, those physical milestones, on cue or early is a sign of being alert. And obviously the earlier, probably the more alert they are. Number 3 is that they are often very active. They're not keen on sitting still. So where you might have a friend that can sit their baby in a pushchair and they'll play with a rattle or look at a book and look around and just be quite content like that whilst you have a nice chat or a coffee, you'll find that your super alert baby won't do that. They're not going to just sit there and be contented. They're going to want to explore or play, or if they're learning to walk, they're going to want to be wandering around and have you hold their hands and practice that. There's very little chilling out time with these alert types, unless of course they're doing another type of activity, which I'll come to in a minute. Number 4 though, they don't seem sleepy, particularly in the daytime, even though they're tired. This can be a tricky thing about alert types. They'll have you think they need less sleep than their friends, when actually they need more. And it's because they just don't really show those sleepy signs. The yawning and the eye rubbing and the irritability that often comes with being tired doesn't show up so much with the alert types, or if it does, it's when it's really way too late and they've gone past it. So they'll have you think that they're fine and that they can cope on less sleep. Actually, the opposite is true, so be very careful with that and work on making sure those naps happen and that sleep happens, even if they don't appear to need it quite so much. That's an important one to look out for. And number 5, my 5th tip for you on working out if you have a super alert child, is that they are easily stimulated. They have a harder time shutting down because of that, so they do struggle with sleep, and so do lots of other children that aren't super alert, but they struggle because they have a harder time shutting down, a harder time blocking out the world. They're stimulated by the slightest thing. So it could be that, maybe at bedtime you're there and you're trying to comfort, reassure, or sit with them. Actually, you're just being there is stimulating. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes these super alert types do better when they're given a little bit of space, that they can process and self-soothe without you there. So sometimes with the super alerts, you can almost try too hard, and you're actually stimulating them even just by being there. So they can be very easily stimulated, and it's important to watch that. Something as a bit of a bonus, really, not number 6 if you like, but it kind of brings together what I've just said is that they can have really high concentration levels. And this isn't typical of all super alerts, but some of them have also got really high concentration levels. So they might sit there and do puzzles or problem solving kind of games or activities because they have the patience to sit and to do it and to try and work it out until they get it right. And that's when I said they won't sit there and play with a rat or look at a book, they want to be active, unless it's something like that problem solving where they're fully engaged. And again, the concentration is what gets them there. So that's another thing to see if they're into that kind of thing. Again, not typical of all super alerts, but it is sometimes a personality trait that sits well with super alerts. So hopefully that helps you identify if you have a child that is really, really alert. And if you do, then no doubt you're having trouble with their sleep, and that's completely normal. It can be resolved, but when they are super alert, they do struggle more so with settling to sleep. They often need a different approach. They need something very much customized to suit them, and then you'll get there. So there you go, how to tell if your child is super alert.